Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So the topic of discussion is who is the doer. So I wanted to start off more from a discussion perspective. So many activities are being done, and this is something that we all have a lot of personal experience. We do a lot of activities on a daily basis since the time we took birth. So who do you think is the doer? The soul. Okay. Any other thoughts? Who is the doer? Who's doing all these activities? So when you say like this, who are you pointing at? At the soul. The material energy?
Modes of nature.
Modes of material energy? Same thing as the material energy. The intelligence. So all answers that are relevant and to some extent correct. So firstly, the understanding is that the soul is not the doer. So Krishna makes that point over and over again, that the soul does not do anything. He says, nadate kaschit cheva. I forget the Sanskrit of the verse, but he makes this point that the soul that is living in this body is not responsible for any of the activities that are done, nor is it responsible for the results of the activities that are there. And to some extent we can understand why Krishna makes this point, because the activities that we are doing are either pious activities or sinful activities. But the soul by nature is pure. It's not possible for the soul to do any sinful activities. It is not, the nature of the soul is that it is eternally linked in the service to Krishna. So the soul cannot go against its nature. Just like liquidity in water, there are so many things that are intrinsic, it cannot go against it. So similarly, the nature of the soul is that Jivere Sarupa Hoy Krishna Nitya Das. That the nature of the soul is that it is the eternal servant, Krishna Nitya Das. It's the eternal servant of Krishna. So it cannot do any activities that are adversarial to Krishna. So we see there are so many sinful activities that are being done, and a lot of them done by us also. And how can we understand that the soul is doing it? Because if it is doing it, then it is violating its own intrinsic quality, that it is eternally pure. The soul has 6 qualities. It is birthless, it is deathless, it is free of it never grows old, it never experiences any lamentation, and it is eternally happy. So these are the qualities of the soul that don't change. So if the soul is not performing the activities, then there are so many activities that are being performed. Who is performing them? So one of the players that seems to be the obvious player is the soul, and based on Krishna's explanation and what seems to be logical, we have eliminated the soul from the arena. So who else would be the perpetrator of all these activities?
Jiva.
Jiva is same thing as soul, right? So you're saying mind.
Also, you
The mind.
Think of the good and the bad.
Okay. Okay.
gross and subtle body.
The gross and subtle body. Okay. Okay. So yes. So it's the activities are performed, like Mataji said, by the modes of material nature. So right up front, when Krishna starts speaking in the 3rd chapter, when he introduces the topic of karma, one of the first things he says, Prakriti kriyamanani guna karmani sarvasha ankara vimodatma kartahamiti manyanti. So Prakriti kriyamanani, all these activities are done by Prakriti. Prakriti kriyamanani guna karmani sarvasha. They're the modes of material nature, they are the cause of all these activities. Then Arjuna would ask the question, then why does everybody say I am doing these activities? And then Krishna says, Ahankara vimodatma, that the soul that is vimud. Muda means bewildered, vimudha means fully bewildered. By what? By ahankar, by false ego. Ahankar vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. They think that I am doing this activities. So there is a third player in this also, that is also referred to many times as the doer. So many times when we have conversations about activities to people, some people will say that all this is being done by God. Who am I? I'm just a small figment of Krishna's or God's will. So God is doing all this. Like Krishna is all powerful, all potent. He controls everything. Krishna makes all those points that I am all powerful. Like he says that not a blade of grass moves without my sanction. And the verses tend to substantiate this point that Krishna is doing all the activities. What are the? So I guess how would you deal with it? Somebody came to you and said that all the activities are done by God. What would be your response to it?
Why does God allow suffering? That's what.
Yes. So that becomes the very first rejoinder. So this is also, so what she said is, why does God allow suffering? Right. So if God is all good, why does He allow bad things to happen? And on the flip side, this is also used by atheists to deny the existence of God. That there is so much of sin being done, and if God is all good and everything is done by the sanction of God, that means either there is no God or the God that is there is powerless, which is the same thing as no God being. Because if there was a God and He was all good, then all activities would be good if He is all powerful. So they use this line of logic to either become atheistic or agnostic. They say that either there is no God or there is a God, but we don't know about His capability. There's a book that was written by a rabbi in the early 60s, I believe. So he was a very pious rabbi, and his son died at a very young age. And then he went on this quest, like, I'm a God-fearing person. Why did my son die? Where was God when my son was dying? And then he wrote a book. It's philosophically it's a little flawed, but it's a very well written book. Why do bad things happen to good people? He wrote those books in which he explores this interaction between acknowledging the presence of God and the nature of activities that are going on. So he talks about two possible scenarios. One is that there is a God, but He is not all powerful, which is why bad things happen to good people. The second scenario, there is a God, but he has a mean streak in him, so he has bad things happening to good people, and then he rejects the second scenario. He says God is all good. But what he does is that finally he accepts the first scenario, that God is there, but he is not all powerful. And the reason he is not all powerful is because he gives, so it's a little bit of a philosophical smorgasbord, that he says that the reason he is not all powerful is because he delegates that power to the jiva. Right. So to some extent, if you look at it from Vaishnava theology, it is the equivalence of Krishna giving free will to, but that does not mean that it mitigates his power in any way. He voluntarily gives that free will there. So Krishna also, he's in the Bhagavad Gita, he says in the 5th chapter, he says, Nadate kaschit papam nacheva sukritam vidu agyane avratam jnanam tena moyanti jantava. He said, Nadate kaschit papam. He says, I don't make anybody do sinful activities. Nacheva sukritam vidu. I don't make anybody do pious activities. Agyane avratam jnanam. That those people whose knowledge is covered by agyan, by ignorance. Tena moyanti jantava. They say this because they are illusioned. Now, to some extent, it's a little bit of counterintuitive, because, and I wanted to discuss this from a preaching perspective, that if a person says that everything is being done by the will of God, your first take would be that this is a person who is very devotional, right? He's basically acknowledging that even when he takes from when people walk, then you take one step after the other without thinking about it. But there are some people who say that it is only by the will of God that my next foot takes step after my first foot. So to that extent they say. But what is the flaw in that line of reasoning? There is no use of free will. Okay.
They won't make the endeavor to do anything.
Yes, they become fatalistic. So when people voluntarily surrender to Krishna, then actually their free will actually grows. They do more because they are enthused in the service of Krishna. But when people become fatalistic, when they say सब कुछ हो रहा है भगवान के भरोसे हो रहा है, they say those kind of things, then it's not that they are fully surrendered to Krishna, but they are actually surrendering to the mode of ignorance. That's why Krishna says, Tena muyanti jantava. That such people are illusioned.
Usually people say that only when there's a negative thing happening, there's a suffering or something, some misery is stricken. Then, ये भगवान ने ऐसा क्यों किया हमारे साथ, और ये सब, etc. But when it's something good happening, then it's my doing.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Then the credit comes to me.
Yeah. And also people use it when they don't want to do anything, right? It's like, my son says to me, you should exercise, and I say, when Krishna will make me exercise, I will exercise. So, so it's just because I don't want to do it, so, I take shelter of Krishna. And I know sometimes when we preach, we tell somebody that, you should chant. And they say, जब भगवान की मर्जी होगी तब करेंगे. So essentially it's a symptom of a mode of ignorance, that there inactivity, but it is worse. I see you. It is worse than inactivity because it is misjustified. So if there's a person who's lazy and says I'm lazy, it's bad, but it's okay. But if a person who's lazy and he says actually I'm not lazy, I'm actually completely surrendered to the Supreme, and everything that I'm doing is fully in line with that, so that's even more dangerous, right? Because they're giving the impression of being properly situated, whereas they are not actually properly situated. Sunil Prabhu?
Yeah, I've heard this question in temple, and is suffering in a particular place like in Syria. So many people have asked this question that how come there is so many people are suffering in one place in a certain period of time? Are they all souls which have done committed bad things and they are all born in the same place, same time, or so how come so many people are suffering in one place?
Yeah, so Prabhupada would say that there is individual karma and collective karma. And collective karma is basically karma that is built by families, societies, countries. So the underlying rationale is the same, that there is karma and there is vikarma. So you do it individually, or let's assume you are in a family where the family is motivating you to do vikarma, so it becomes family's vikarma, or the society may be motivating you to do it, or the country may be motivating you to do it. Prabhupada at one point said that the reason there is so much suffering in India is because of vikarma, because the country is executing vikarma. That the difference between America and India is people in America, they don't know, and that's why they do something out of ignorance. People in India, they know, and yet they don't act on it. They know that you should not kill animals and eat, yet they will kill animals and eat. They know that you should not kill a cow and eat, yet there are some people who will do it. So that is why the country as a whole also suffers. So in the same way as the ages progress, so this is basically Yuga karma. The people in Satyug, they enjoyed a much higher standard of life. Just being born in Satyug meant that you had a much higher standard of life, because people in Satyug, the followance of the religious principles, the principles of dharma was much higher. So the yuga itself was very conducive to piety. And people who are born in Kali Yuga, it's difficult to have that level of piety. So there is the yuga karma that also comes in.
So the souls in Satyug were different from the ones in Kali Yuga, or how, if they were higher souls, then how come?
They were higher souls. So the souls get birth based on their own
so they
past.
Should have risen higher, or they just were demoted, to say.
So every soul is on their
Kali Yuga.
every soul is on their individual journey,
Yes.
and it's not like there is a fixed number of souls, right? Like there are infinite souls. So the souls in the age of Satyug, the understanding is most of them got elevated to higher planetary systems. But then there are souls in the higher planetary systems who are committing sinful activities, and they are basically, they're basically falling down. And Earth is the middle planetary system. So from here also the souls can fall down to hellish planets, right? So if somebody is living on the Earth and committing sinful activities, they'll fall down to hellish planets. So somebody might say that you were on the higher planetary system, why didn't you go up? Because they have the free will, right? They can do whatever they want. So the environment it gives more opportunities, but ultimately the free will of the soul is that they'll take it or not. In Satyug there were demons also. There were people who were doing really demoniac activities, more so than what you would see in Kali Yuga. And in Kali Yuga there are pious souls more so than what you would see in Satyug.
So, just to add on Sunil Prabhu's question, when it was asked in the temple, Bhayahari Prabhu, he thought about it first and then he responded, because this was this American lady who asked this question. Prabhu, I am happy here, but I am so worried about the people in Syria. So he said, are you happy? He asked her.
Mm-hmm.
Are you not suffering?
Mm-hmm.
Is America taking care of you so well that you don't fall sick and you don't have any worries, your kids are with you,
Right.
And eventually he said that it may seem to you that people in Syria are suffering more than you, but you are suffering equally from somebody's perspective. because this is Dukhalaya and everybody is suffering based of their karma account. And
Right.
so he says, no, it's not about India or America or Syria, it's about Yug that we are in and our karma account, and all of us are equally suffering and everybody has equal opportunity. They get a lot of chance to do service over there because there's a lot of crime. So wherever, I mean, you have to look at the opportunity in a given place,
Right.
wherever you are, and there are better opportunities for you to get elevation, and maybe Krishna has provided some of those souls over there that opportunity that they can make a quick win. So he answered it in such a manner that the questioner felt that there's no difference between Syria and America.
And it's true, all karma is bad karma. Like people who are born in America, they're born because of, actually that breaks if you lean against it. But we fix it, it's okay, it doesn't break for good. So like, people born in America are always obviously born because of good karma. You're born in a opulent country and the power doesn't go off. So there are a lot of things that come. So there's good karma, but ultimately, there's still birth, death, and disease and old age.
Yeah.
Right.
The way I look at it, this is my thinking, that people in Syria, though they may be suffering, but that's a physical suffering. But mentally they may be as good,
It's possible.
Yeah.
It's possible.
And
Yeah.
I don't think people in America, just because they have lights,
They look good, yeah.
That's all happy media,
Yeah.
That is true. That is true.
But mentally they suffer more,
True.
than the people in India. in my opinion.
That is true. And we all have experience with it. Like, coming from India, most of our conditions are more austere there. You don't have running water all the time, electricity comes and goes. But it's not that we were mentally suffering. We were happy, we had a good time, and we would play out in the sun.
People
And,
even you may be poor, but he becomes a lot more stronger in real life, as somebody who is born in a rich family, and his kid may not do that well.
Yeah. So they say there are like three kinds of sufferings. There is Adhyatmic, Adhidevik, and Adhibhautik. And we are always tossing between these three. Adhibhautik is what happens to our body, by diseases or weaknesses. Adhidevik is what is caused by divine consideration, like it's too hot or too cold, or the situation is creating a lot of physical discomfort. And Adhyatmic is suffering caused by your mind. Everything may be okay and your mind is suffering. Sometimes you see people who are very rich and famous and they commit suicide, and then you think that, why would they commit suicide? They're so rich and they have, so they have everything. They have fame, they have wealth, they have followers, but their mind is not telling. Their mind is telling them something else, and they take the extreme step. So between the three of them, we are always tossing between, Adhyatmic, Adhidevik, and Adhibhautik. And at the end of the day, the karma may elevate us or deflate us, but karma is not going to protect you from death. Karma is not going to protect you from. Everybody grows old. Even Brahma grows old and dies. So everybody in this universe is going through that cycle. I'm sorry, Prabhu, you had your hand up for a while.
Almost with the answer. So I was thinking everybody have limited knowledge, not the entire complete knowledge how to do karma. I mean, Gita teaches all of them, but sometimes there is so much thing happening around us. Very easy to get diverted from the things, and what is the best way to judge them? I mean, with a limited knowledge, and do perfect karma so that you can not be this transactional way and move to Krishna planet.
Yeah, it's a good question. Any thoughts on that? That karma is complicated. Understanding good karma, differentiating it from bad karma is difficult. So what's an easy way to do good karma and get elevated to Krishna Loka?
Offering to Krishna,
By offering to Krishna. Okay. The fruits of activities. Okay.
In my opinion, the first, most important thing is to have faith in Krishna. That even whatever circumstances you are in, He will take care of you. He'll be on your good side if you have faith in Him. So faith is my way of
Having faith in Krishna. That's a good point.
Association is making a lot of difference, is what we read in Lecture of Instruction.
Mhm.
Even for devotees, if they stay in bad company, it may affect their karma. So
Right.
we have to stay in good association, preferably in temple is what was suggested,
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
stay and keep doing good karma.
Mhm. So that's a how to. How to do good karma. Stay in association of.
How to avoid
uh,
bad karma.
How to avoid bad karma. Stay in association with devotees. Other thoughts?
It is an intrinsic part of the soul, like when a baby is born. So even like to a certain extent, a 5-year-old would know that pushing another kid or even stealing is bad. To a certain extent, not like on the whole picture as that of an adult. To a certain extent, and based upon on how they build it up, like even adults, like stealing or anger or any other issues like laziness, they recognize it. I'm talking in terms of karma. So it's just not only that you recognize it, but then how you work towards it. I think that is what makes good karma. Other than, I mean, the spirituality is always the topmost,
Mhm.
but then even recognizing what you can do. So,
Right.
so that, I think that is very,
Right.
like, when you see most of the shopkeepers, they say, "Arey yaar, aapke paise jute hum nahi lenge," but fir bhi wo lenge aapke paise. So you know, I wouldn't say that's not a practical word. I mean, one might argue that they're just living in a practical way, but still, like, you know, you can say, I think we all have opportunities to do
That's
good
correct.
karma. I think we just have to recognize those opportunities.
Yeah, right. So I think then combining these two aspects, like what Avinash said, is having faith in Krishna, and what Bindu Mataji is saying is that trying to do the right thing. You know, so that's our key. The bedrock is having faith in Krishna, and if you have faith in Krishna, Krishna guides you. Krishna gives you the opportunity to associate with devotees. Krishna also gives instructions in terms of what to do and what not to do, and then based on that, as we live our lives, then our karma gets converted into Krishna karma. So it's not karma that will, otherwise even good karma will force you to take birth again, right? So you may be born as a demigod or as a king, but even then you have to suffer. You know, even then you have to. Indra is constantly in anxiety. He's the king of the demigods, and even he dies, he suffers. So when we do Krishna karma, then it automatically becomes nishkam. And Krishna karma is also called bhakti. So by the execution of bhakti activities that are favorable to Krishna, in the association of devotees. So one aspect over here which is a little confusing is that we have identified that of the three doers, the Jiva, Krishna, and Prakriti, or the modes of material nature, the activities are being done by the modes of material nature. Why does the Jiva suffer because of it? Because so let's assume I'm going along with a friend. I'm a good person, the friend is a bad person. He's doing a lot of bad activities, right? So I should not suffer because of me being with him. But in reality what happens is that the modes of material nature are inert. Right? They're material. There are only two sentient beings in the universe. There is the Jivas and there is Krishna. Everything else is material. It is Jad. So it has no life, it has no consciousness. And the modes of material nature fall in that category. They're material. So, how can something material do something? And why should the jiva suffer because of what somebody else is doing?
Jiva desires, jiva choice, he makes a choice.
Mm-hmm.
If he makes a bad choice, he suffers.
So jiva makes a choice. If he makes a bad choice, he suffers. Okay, that's one answer.
It's the material nature, because when there is cloud, automatically even if the jiva doesn't desire, because then the cloud or something, even if we have other planets, those effects are on Earth, and according to that we also our feelings and mood change. So it's the material nature it's doing.
Okay, so it's because of the association with the material nature, close association with the material nature. Okay.
And it's the body suffering, not the soul.
It's the body that is suffering, not the soul. Okay.
So one more thought process is, because we are here in this yuga as born with a body, so we have to act, we have to do karma. We cannot live without doing karma. And now, based on how karmas are divided, and we are under the influence of Maya also, so we may act bad, but with Krishna's mercy, with devotional life, we may do good karma also, in which case we will not be suffering eventually. So, I mean, it's free will also, what choices I am making and what circumstances I am in, and if I am making bad choices, I will have to suffer.
Okay. So all these go against what we agreed on in the previous half an hour, right? We agreed that the jiva is not doing any activities, the modes of material nature are the actors. We agreed that Krishna is not doing any activities. Krishna, and we agreed because Krishna is saying, it's not that we're making it up, right? Krishna is saying that. And then everything that we're saying now goes against that. You're basically inadvertently moving the center of gravity back to the jiva, right? How do we reconcile it? Krishna says prakriti kyamana niguna karma, that he says everything is being done by the modes of material nature, by prakriti. So if Krishna was to come to you, and then you would say, why am I suffering, Krishna? You yourself said prakriti kyamana. If I did sinful activities, the modes of material nature did them. Go and punish them. Right? Take me back with you. And Krishna will say, no, I'm going to send you to a low planetary system. So there's something that is missing over here.
My opinion is Krishna is giving you sufferings to test you, whether you are capable of doing that thing or not, so that he can take you with you. That's a test for you. So suffering is not bad. It's how you look at it, and suffering is just an examination of your examination to you, so that Krishna can say, yeah, he is God who has faith in me now. He has passed the test.
So if there is a person who didn't have faith in Krishna, he should not get any suffering, right? Because Krishna won't give him any suffering. He's not going to take him back for sure, right?
Well, he may fail.
Okay,
So
if he fails, and then he
keep coming on the earth again after again. If he is good, he passes the test, then he gives us salvation.
So he passes the test, he gets salvation. He fails, he stays in the earth planet system, and then Krishna should leave him alone. He is a failure, right? So he should leave him alone. So no more suffering for him.
He keep on giving test after test to see to improve himself.
You know what's the definition of insanity? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So why would Krishna do that? He's definitely not mad, right? So there's a jiva, he gave him a test, he failed, and then he says okay, and then he'll give him the test again, and then he fails again, and then he gives him the test again.
Gives you a chance to improve yourself.
So he gives you suffering so that you can improve. He may do that. Why would he do that? Why would he give?
Like you said, that to learn lessons from our suffering.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
And
I don't
if
know,
you
is Krishna doing it or it's just?
so if you don't learn lessons from your suffering,
Yeah.
then Krishna will stop giving you suffering.
He's not going to stop
Oh,
you.
it is-
Yeah. So he'll continue. So he's very obstinate, right? He'll continue to give you suffering, whether you learn lessons or not.
Oh, you learn with time.
Krishna's doing it.
So either he's very malicious, that or
Like loving father, sometimes we will tell our child something. Okay, don't touch fire, and then the child doesn't listen, and he touches it. Then obviously, unless and until he gets burned, he may keep trying to do this. So once he's learned his lesson, then he won't.
But
Then
if he doesn't, so if your son did not learn by touching fire,
Burn his hand again.
would you burn his hand again? You would take his hand and put it in fire
No,
again?
I wouldn't
You
do
would
that.
do it.
Krishna is more merciful than us, right? He is much more merciful than us. If he won't do it, Krishna won't do it. You can,
And you as a parent would keep saying it not to do it, but he has
If he does it, he's got to learn his lessons.
Right.
I think we are going a little bit off because we are trying to find a link between the three supposed to be doers, so we can find
The link between the three, and this is a good way to explore it, because and that is why Krishna says, "Nadate kaschit papam na cheva sukritam vidu." I am not responsible for anybody's suffering. Agyane avritam jnana tena muyanti jantava. He calls such persons vimudas, first class fools. He calls them people who think that Krishna is the cause of the suffering. He calls them first class fools.
the karma actually.
Because there is only one person who is responsible for your suffering. Guess who is that person? Just yourself. Yes, regardless of where the situation is, regardless is that you're walking down the street having looked at both the sides and a car runs you over, still your karma. That's there. It's not Krishna. Not even the guy who was driving the car who was drunk. Not even him. Right? He was just the efficient cause. The ultimate cause is you yourself. So when people say that, and that's the reason I was wanting to explore this, when people say that suffering is coming from Krishna, then they are painting Krishna in as a bad god. Maybe you don't, because you're a devotee, but when people say that that all this suffering is, whether it is coming for learning or whatever it is, that it's coming from God, it does two things. One thing is that it removes the responsibility of your own suffering from yourself. So if I were to say, Prabhu, if you have to not suffer in the future, take responsibility of your own actions. And then you say, not really, this is all coming from Krishna. They are lessons from Krishna. I can do anything I want. So what it does is that the person does not take responsibility of their own action. They falsely move it to Krishna. So there is tattva vibhrama. That one thing is that intrinsically you're doing something that Krishna says is not there, and at a more experiential level, you are not taking responsibilities of your own action. Which is really bad. You need to take responsibilities, not just for your actions in this life, actions in the previous lives, and understanding that they will affect the actions in the future life. So overall, I think how these three connect. So we have three doers in play, and these are all very valid thoughts and points. That how are they interacting. So one way to understand is Krishna uses analogies a lot. So one way to understand is through an analogy. That of a person sitting in a car that is being driven and by somebody, by the person's driver, and the person is using, let's assume the person is using a GPS to go. So the person chooses which car to get in, right? The person goes in and says that, I'd like a Jaguar, and the one person who's giving out the car says that, the Jaguar is, I don't know, $200 a day. So he says, I can't really afford $200 a day. I have only $10 a day. He says, you get a Ford Pinto for $10 a day. So he gets a Ford Pinto, and but he says that, this is a stick shift, you can't drive it, so my driver will go along with you. So the person sits in the car, the driver is driving the car, and he enters wherever he wants the destination in the GPS, and the GPS is directing the car. So the three players over here are that the person who is sitting in the car is the jiva. The person who is driving the car is Paramatma, and the GPS that is directing the car is the modes of material nature. Is the modes of material nature. So ultimately, it's the modes of material nature that is taking the car into different places, good and bad. The soul on itself, it does not know how to manipulate matter, because it's like you go to moon, you need a suit there, otherwise you die. So when the soul comes to the material world, it will die. I mean, the soul cannot die, but it doesn't know how to live in the material world, because it's an alien. Somebody had made this very nice statement that we are not human beings having spiritual experiences, we are spiritual beings having human experiences. So our intrinsic nature is spiritual, but because of various reasons we have this human body and we are having this human experience. So that's why Krishna comes along with us. He comes along with us as Paramatma, and Paramatma is the one that is based on what we desire, that is executing all the actions. As a neutral observer, the Paramatma only sees two things: what the soul desires and what the soul deserves. Just these two things. So I am in this body and I desire that let me fly. The Paramatma will say, not possible. You may desire, but you don't deserve it. The bird can do that because the bird has that kind of a body. Bill Gates might desire that let me give $1 million in charity. Paramatma will say, you deserve it. I say that I cannot do that. So based on these two things, the important thing is that Paramatma does not make the distinction between pious and impious activities. If a person desires to take a knife and kill a child, the Paramatma actually does that. So that is why Krishna makes this point very clear, that I neither sanction nor am I held responsible for any pious or impious activities. Now the jiva is in a way not doing anything, because if you look at the car moving, the one person who is most passive is the passenger in the car, just sitting like this, not doing anything. The driver is driving, the GPS is doing all the navigation, etc. But how is all this happening? Who got into the car in the first place? Who put in the coordinates in the GPS? So that is where I think Laddu Gopal Prabhu had made this point. That is where the desires of the jiva come into play. That based on the desires of the jiva, the everything comes into motion. The Paramatma looks at the desires and sees that, okay, based on the desire, this is what the jiva can do. Based on the desires, the modes of material nature also act, because the modes of material nature are present for everybody. then why is it there are some people in the mode of goodness and some people in the mode of ignorance? Right? If we all went to school, there were some kids who came first, there were some kids who flunked classes. They had the same teachers, same opportunities, but then they chose to associate in different ways. So the modes are present equally for everybody. Now, based on Kaldesh Patra, a mode may be more easily accessible than another mode. In the morning, the mode of goodness is prominent. It is easier to chant your rounds in the morning than at night. It is easier to read the Gita in the morning than at night, because the mode of goodness is stronger there. But that does not mean that everybody is in the mode of goodness in the morning. There are people who are doing sinful activities in the morning. So they choose to associate with the mode that they like to. But once they choose the mode takes over. That's the important. That's why Krishna says that the modes are doing everything. Prabhupada would give the example that you go to the airport and there are so many flights that are going from there, and you say, okay, I want to go to New Delhi. Once you're on the plane, you're going to go to New Delhi. Then things are not in your control. You'll go to New Delhi, you'll land over there. Many times when we plan our trips to India, we pick I remember once I picked a really cheap airline there. And once I was on that airline, I was there on that airline. Nothing I could do. The air hostesses kept scolding me all the way, and there was no place in there, and I was sitting with my on my lap because there was no place on the top over there. It was a horrible flight, but I had no option. I couldn't bail out of it in between. So that is the association of the jiva with the modes. Once the jiva chooses a mode, the mode takes over. There, the jiva does not have any opportunity to disengage from that. That is why it is said that the modes are supreme. They are supreme because the jiva makes them supreme. When the jiva says that now you are in control, then the modes take control. But when they take control, they take full control of the engagement. So in this way, these three doers, in the 18th chapter, then Krishna says, because at different points in the Bhagavad Gita, depending on the particular philosophical aspect that he is talking, earlier on he says everything is done by the modes of material nature. The jiva does not do anything. In the middle, he says that based on the desires of the jiva, he takes a certain body, he takes a certain kind of senses, and based on that, certain kind of activities are performed. Later on, in the 15th chapter, he says that the super soul is directing the activities of everybody. He's sitting in the heart, and he is the overseer and the permitter. And in the 18th chapter, then he reconciles everything. He says that based on the desires of the jiva, the modes become prominent, and based on that, the super soul either sanctions or declines, and that's how all these activities are done. So if we understand this, and karma is the mechanics of karma is complicated, but the reason Krishna explains it, because he has a purpose. He wants us to understand this, because he wants us to understand that the situation that we are in is a very difficult situation. That even though we have free will, our free will is very limited, because it is only limited to pushing a certain button, and then we are there for the ride. That's why Krishna, right up front, he says that the modes of material nature are supreme. So he's saying that I think Rampal Maharaj makes this point in some of his lectures. He says, don't flirt with Maya. She's a very dangerous lady. So the reason Krishna makes this point is that we should not flirt with material energy. We should not think that I will do this, and it's like one person was saying that is a devotee. He wrote to his Guru Maharaj saying that, is it okay if I buy lottery tickets? Lottery tickets is kind of gambling, so it's not recommended for devotees. So he says, is it okay if I buy lottery tickets, and whatever money that if I win, then I'll give the money to the temple. And then his Guru Maharaj wrote back saying, don't flirt with Maya. Because you buy lottery tickets and then you win it, and then you say, well, I did agree to give the proceeds to Krishna, but were they net or gross proceeds? And maybe they are net proceeds, but Krishna would want me to keep something for myself. There's that I think one of those kathas of a person who goes to Kali Devi and says that if something happens to me, I'll give you a goat. So that something happens, and then he goes back and then he tells Kali Devi says, where's my goat? And then he says that this season is very difficult to get goats. Could you settle for something else? I do want to give you something. And then Kali Devi says, okay, give me a chicken. And then he said, these chickens are really frisky. It's very difficult to catch a chicken. So could you settle for something else? And finally Kali Devi gets really frustrated and she said, give me a fly. And then he said, so many flies flying around, just catch one for yourself. So, it's allegorical, but the point is that, that's the nature of the mind, that, it will try and find loopholes. So, that's the point Krishna wants to make to us, that this material, this material energy of Krishna, it is very powerful and it is very dangerous. And the more we become aware of its potency, the more that we become aware of how easily it can take us on to a ride for several lifetimes, the more we become careful in dealing with it. When Krishna says that these modes of material nature doing all the activities, the first thing that should come to our mind is, how do we disengage with the modes of material nature? That's the first thing that should come to our mind. That if these modes that are taking us on suffering and repeated cycles of birth and death, how do we disengage with the modes? And that takes us on the path of bhakti, because bhakti is independent of the modes. Arjun was killing, which is in the mode of ignorance, but he was performing devotional service because he was doing it on the orders of Krishna. On the orders of Guru Maharaj, people do a lot of very passionate activities. When Prabhupada was there, so when you saw the movie, you saw that there was so much of passionate activities. That mantra rock, they were doing. I was reading about it a little bit more in the movie. It's just a few seconds, but they were going and talking to all these people. Grateful Dead, Moby Grape, and they were all drug addicts. I don't know if they were drug addicts, but they were doing drugs and intoxications and all those things. And devotees were going and talking to them and pleading them to come and do it, because they wanted them to come and do a show so that people would come and listen to Prabhupada. So they were doing a lot of passionate activities, but because they were doing it for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna, they were automatically protected because of that. Because even the mode of goodness, one might think that I'll stay in the mode of goodness and that way I'll be protected, but even the mode of goodness itself is actually one of the most dangerous modes to be in, because it gives you the superficial expression of pleasure. The mode of goodness has two symptoms, that it gives you knowledge and renunciation. Both of them give you some kind of happiness. But the mode of goodness also conditions you to the material life. People who are very strongly, in India, sometimes when we preach to Brahmins who are very pakka Brahmins, very difficult for them to take to bhakti, because they're so much into the mode of goodness. They get up in the morning, they do the Mangalacharan, they'll do the homa, and then they'll give in charity, they live very disciplined lives, but there isn't a lot of bhakti there. They lead a life that is very, very sattvic, but it's very difficult for them to change from it, because the nature of mode of goodness, it makes you feel good. That's why it's mode of goodness. It makes you feel good. And they say that I'm happy where I am. But what the mode of goodness will do is that ultimately they'll again take birth. Maybe in a rich family, maybe as a demigod. And then they will again go through the cycle. And the nature of the material world is that it will always eventually pull you down to the mode of ignorance. It's like the chaos theory, right? You know the chaos theory that left by itself, everything goes into a state of chaos. Order can only be maintained when somebody external is imposing on it. So similarly, that's the nature. That eventually, the mode of ignorance will overpower. In the Bhagavatam, we have so many pastimes of such great rishis, demigods, very strongly in the mode of goodness. And because of something, they suddenly steep down to the mode of ignorance. Like Ajamil, strongly in the mode of goodness. Brahman, he had a nice, beautiful wife. He was serving his parents. He was going down the jungle. He saw a prostitute with another man, and he immediately gave up everything. He ran after the prostitute. He married her, and he started just to please her. He killed people. He became a thief. Everything that was sinful, he started doing, and all because of one moment. That just one moment, he was walking down the road. He saw them, and then the mode of goodness that he had cultivated for so many years, it just evaporated in a flash. So the reason Krishna makes us aware of these doers and the interplay between them is to also make us aware that it's something that we cannot fix on our own. It's something that we cannot conquer on our own, and that is why we have to take shelter of Krishna. Prabhupada would give the example that if you are if you're in a fighting ring and your opponent is much more powerful than you, there is only one way that you can win, and that is you make friends with somebody who is more powerful than your opponent. So Maya Devi is much more powerful than us. Anytime we go against her, 100% of the time she will beat us without breaking a sweat. She's Krishna's external energy. So she is infinitely more powerful than us. But Krishna is infinitely more powerful than Maya Devi. So the only way that we can go against Maya Devi is if we make friends with Krishna. On our own, she will always defeat us. Okay, so I'll just stop for any questions. Okay.
Just so you say, in the case of Ajamil's story, at what particular stage he could have made a different choice? Say, because he was going and stopped.
Right.
Say, because something happens with us, like say, somebody's diabetes and he's going through, like say, 8 shops, and then once he's there, he contemplates, then he cannot control himself, and he's going to eat.
Yeah.
Something like that. So it says like what particular stage you can stop your mind.
It's a good question. So if you read the Ajamil pastime in a little bit more scrutinizing way, you see that he went through the 4 stages based on the observation that he had. So he saw that and he walked away, right? Mm-hmm. Then what happened after that? He went into the thinking stage. That every over the day, when he was doing his morning puja, he was thinking about the woman. When he would lie down at night, he would think about the woman. Then from thinking, he went to feeling. He began to then think, how would it be, what would it be like to be with her? Then he went to the 3rd stage, which is willing. Then he began to make plans. So he searched her out, that where is she, and found out where she was, and then he executed. So we go through any activity that we do, we go through these 4 stages of thinking, feeling, willing, and doing. And we can stop ourselves at any of the 4 stages. the closer it is to doing, the more difficult it becomes to stop. But we can stop ourselves at any stages. So the process of bhakti is designed that it protects us at every stage. So we don't think about sinful activities because we are busy thinking about devotional activities, right? We don't feel the consequences of them because we are feeling a higher taste. We don't will ourselves to do it because we are in the association of our Guru Maharaj, the instructions that prohibit us from it. And then we don't do it because we are surrounded by devotees. So the process of bhakti is designed in a way that it catches us in each of the four stages. And we've seen that in our life as devotees. At the end of the day, we are also Mishrit Bhaktas. We're trying to be devotees. And our mind might go from one thing to another. But we see that one of these four things will always catch us, right? That either when we are thinking about it, and then we think that Bhagavad Gita says something different, our Guru Maharaj says something different, or when we are feeling it, and then we compare it with the feeling we experience when we do deity worship or when we do chanting, or if we're willing it, then we put it aside with, okay, if I was planning for Janmashtami at the temple, or if I was doing this, and ultimately doing it is like, what would the devotees think about me? And then this, the Guhyam Akhiti Prachati, the association of devotees, that my mind is bewildered because of this reason, and the other devotees, they help you out at that time. Yeah, that helps.
You're also talking about like causes, there are three different causes for the efficient cause and
two causes, the immediate and efficient.
Immediate.
Right. So it's kind of like a chain. It's like the analogy that is given, that if you see a pot, then the immediate cause is the potter. The potter made this pot. But then the efficient cause may be something else. That why did the potter make this pot? Right? And then it goes in a chain like that. So there's an immediate cause, an efficient cause, and for that efficient cause there is an immediate cause. The potter was there because the potter's parents were there. So that's one way of looking at the causality. Other way is that somebody, you're walking down the road and somebody hits you. Right? The cause of the suffering is that person. But the reason the person hit you was because maybe you had hit the person in the previous lifetime. So then the cause of the person is that is you, and that is one reason why. So this becomes more philosophical. That is one reason why Krishna says that nothing happens without my will, because if you take all the cause and effect, they always end in Krishna. Right. So ultimately, because he's he's sanctioning everything that is going on. But the difference is that when we perform activities for which we are responsible, then Krishna uses the law of karma to either reward us or punish. So while he creates the law of karma, he is not a part of the law of karma. You see, like the king creates a set of rules. If you do this, good. If you do this, bad. And then he goes away. But those rules are there. Person does good, they enjoy. Person does bad, they suffer. So in a way, the king is not responsible. The person is responsible and the rules are responsible. But in a way, the king is responsible because he established the set of rules. So that is why Krishna is the ultimate person who is doing it. But also he is not, because once he sets it, he says, I have nothing to. Chaturvanya Maya Shreshta Guna Karma Vibhavasha. That he says, even though I established this, I am the non-doer. I have nothing to do with it. Yeah? Okay, so we can have. I don't see a lot of kids around. Yeah?
Yes.